Hey guys, it's Mr. Schmidt here, and in this video, we're going to look at topic 3.2 short run production costs. So, this is probably one of the most important topics in the entire course. And I know, I feel like I say that every once in a while, but this just really is important because this topic creates some very important building blocks we're going to use in units 3 and 4. And so it's really important that we do a good job with this topic, which looks at a firm's costs. And so let's start with this difference between short run versus long run, because that is something that's kind of referred to in the title of the section, which is short run production costs. So, short run is a period of time in which at least one resource is fixed. So, remember, a fixed resource is a resource that does not change, it's constant, right? That's a fixed resource. Whereas the long run is a period of time in which all resources are variable and therefore can be changed. So the difference between short run and long run, short run, you got to have at least one fixed resource, typically capital. And then in the long run, all your resources can be changed. And we'll look at long run production costs in the next video. So moving right along here to total fixed costs. So total fixed costs, as you might have guessed, is the cost of your fixed resources. So for example, the rent you pay, the insurance you take out on your company, right? This is a constant number regardless of the output produced. And that means that even if you're producing zero output, you will still have this total fixed cost. Why? Because even a factory not making anything, the landlord that owns the land on the factory is still going to want their rent, right? That's the idea. Okay? With, think about with your own, if you have car insurance, right? Okay, I don't want driving my car, I don't need to pay my car insurance. They're still going to want their money at the end of the month, even if you're not driving your car. So just another example of total fixed cost. Total variable costs are the cost of your variable resources. So, for example, your labor, your electricity, the cost of things that can change. And because the resources themselves can change, TVC does depend on the output produced. And when you are producing zero output, you would have zero variable costs because you can turn off the lights, you can fire every worker, right? Those costs can be eliminated. And so total variable cost would be zero. And then total cost is simply adding your fixed and variable costs together. And you can see the importance of acronyms here. Often we'll refer to these via shorthand. So TFC being total fixed cost, TVC being total variable cost. Marginal cost is the additional cost of an additional unit of output. And this is a very, very, very important metric. Okay, again, we see that word marginal again. Remember, that means one more additional. We've seen that so many times throughout the course. And it is the change in total cost, but it is also the change in total variable cost. Now, why is that the case? Well, remember that total fixed plus total variable equals total cost. If I put a triangle in front of all three of these, an imaginary triangle, it's still the same formula, right? Change in total cost is the change in total fixed plus the change in total variable. Well, total fixed cost never changes. And so basically it cancels out. And so your change in total cost is the same as your change in total variable cost. Okay. Marginal cost. Sorry, before I go on, just one more thing about marginal cost. Very, very important one to understand here. So, as a firm, firms tend to think on the margin. They think about that next unit they're going to produce and whether that's going to cost them more than the money they're going to generate by selling it. And then we've got our averages. Average fixed cost is your fixed cost per unit of output. So we'll take our total fixed cost divided by Q to get your average fixed cost. Average variable cost is your variable cost per unit of output. So your TVC divided by Q, your total variable cost divided by Q. And then your average total cost is your total cost divided by Q. So just really important to, before we go on to the practice, just really important, with these formulas, work on these formulas, memorizing these formulas, because there are AP questions, particularly in the multiple choice section, that has you using these formulas. So let's go ahead and do a bit of practice here. If the average fixed cost of producing 5 units of output is $100, what is the total fixed cost of producing 25 units of output? Go ahead and pause the video, and then let's see what you got. So the correct answer here is $500. How do we get this? Well, we can calculate the total fixed cost by taking 5 units times 100, and that gives us $500 of total fixed cost. Well, whether we're producing 5 units, 100 units, 25 units, the total fixed cost is always the same, and so it's $500. And then a few other formulas here just to keep in mind. As you just learned, you can get your totals by taking the corresponding average times Q, and your average total cost can be calculated by adding your average fixed and variable together. And so finally, the last thing I want to do in the video is model the cost functions. And so you can see we have total cost, total variable, total fixed. Total fixed never changes, horizontal line. You'll notice the gap between total cost and total variable cost is constant because that gap is your total fixed cost. And then finally, second to last, really, with our averages, okay, and marginal cost. Something very important here. Notice these circles I've drawn just to highlight. These aren't technically part of the graph, but what I'm saying here is when your averages, average total and average variable, not average fixed, but when average total and average variable intersect marginal cost, they are minimized. So the way I tell students to draw it is make a dot on marginal cost, swing up to get your curve drawn. Notice that ATC and AVC get closer together as more units are produced. That's because your average fixed cost, which is the gap between these two curves, gets smaller. Marginal cost, your Nike swoosh. That's how I remember to tell students to draw it, or how to remember the shape of it. But I cannot stress enough, when ATC and AVC hit marginal cost, they better be minimized at those points. Very important. One thing to keep in mind with marginal cost is that it's actually the inverse of marginal product in terms of the graph shape. Because of diminishing marginal product, you're getting less out of your output, which means it's costing you more to produce that output. So just to keep in mind that they are indeed mirror images of each other. And so the last thing I want to talk about here is, well, what happens when there's a change in fixed or change in variable costs? Well, if your fixed costs change, that will impact your total costs and your fixed costs, both total and average. If variable costs change, that will impact your average, variable, average total, and marginal cost. So sometimes they will ask about this, so just be aware of that. So that's all for this video on short run production costs. Until next time, have a great day.